Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Peter Clark Nelson, and I want to welcome you to the latest episode of the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. This is the show that teaches you how to scale your consciousness while scaling your business. And as you heard during the intro, our guest today is the founder of Urban Alchemy, Janine Hassel. Janine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited for you to be here as well because I've had an opportunity to work with you. And I'll share a little bit about my experience later in the interview. But for right now, share with us your inspired message and what you do to work with people to help them heal themselves.
My inspired message has really developed over the last several years of doing my own inner work. And it is all about helping other people find and uncover their inspired message, helping them reconnect to their authentic self and finding their authentic voice. And in order to do that, helping them learn how to peel back the layers, heal their own issues at whatever level they're on, and then be able to move forward from there in whatever way is perfect for them. And I do that through what I call a multidimensional wellness approach, where we look at all of the aspects of who we are. So your physical self, where your health is at on a physical level, your mental layers, your emotional layers, the energetic layer, and our ancestral and even karmic layers.
Yeah, I think that's incredible because when you hear these terms like multidimensional wellness, for people that were listening to the intro there and got a chance to hear about your background and the work you're doing through Urban Alchemy, these are terms that some people may not be completely familiar with. For example, you're very well versed as a practitioner in a 5,000-year-old holistic healing system known as Ayurveda, right? So that obviously is a system that works as many layers to that, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But what I think is really incredible is how you bring your own unique intent and perspective to it, and you're merging these different modalities. For example, you're an intuitive shadow work coach. So that's a term, shadow work, that some people might have read an article on. Maybe you heard about it in a workshop you took at some point. I got to tell you from my own personal experience, shadow work is without a doubt the single most important thing you can do for yourself, and also the most important thing you can do to ensure longevity in the success of your business. And that might seem, well, that's a pretty big statement to make because you may have read these books and attended these, seminars about how to scale a business, and you never heard anybody say shadow work was the most important thing. You're going to learn a little bit more about why that is. And also, for those of you who are listening to the podcast and watching the video, I encourage you to please stay with us till the end of this interview, because you're going to get an opportunity to learn about how to gain access to a bonus video that Janine was incredibly gracious to grant us. She and I had a 30-minute talk on shadow work. Now, 30 minutes, that could have been 3 to 5 hours because there's so many levels to it. But in those 30 minutes, you're going to have your eyes and your mind and your heart opened to a way to love yourself and how that plays a role in scaling your business. So before we jump into all of that and get into just the multi-layered dimensional aspects of wellness, talk a little bit about how you're working with people in terms of helping them heal themselves and the relationship that has to scaling the consciousness of the planet.
I take an approach where, through my own learning the hard way in a lot of cases, I've discovered is really the only way to look at things. And I feel very strongly like I'm here to help other people start to see things in that way, because it will help accelerate our own healing. And as a result of us doing our own healing, we help raise the collective consciousness of our entire, planet. So some different tools I use are tapping in intuitively through energy work, a combination of Ayurvedic body treatments, some Ayurvedic dietary adjustments, if those are appropriate. We do left brain tools like changing your beliefs, how to expose some of the lies you tell yourself, doing that's in the realm of shadow work, basically uncovering whatever it is that is sitting in your subconscious that you're not aware of, that is affecting every aspect of your life outside of you, because it does. And some stuff we are aware of, but it's just a matter of, well, how do we, even if you're aware of it, how do we start to shift it? How do you know where to start? The intuitive energy sessions help because everybody's unique and has their own, the way they think about things, the way they see things. So the energy sessions really help me hone in on what the higher self is bringing through as to what might be the best approach for them. So we just kind of tailor it depending on the person. But it will always be a combination of dietary adjustments, some body work, energy sessions, and then things like journaling, changing your beliefs, neuro-linguistic programming. Just depends on whatever it is that comes up for that person.
Yeah, and I've personally had an opportunity to work with you in that area. So I want to share just a little bit about my experience, because I want people who are listening to this program and watching this to understand what multidimensional wellness is, and specifically what Janine was talking about there in terms of energy work and some of the Ayurveda, just, you know, the body work that's involved. Because I actually had Janine work with me on an Ayurveda foot massage. Now, I want to say right up front, this is not your traditional foot massage. And because of the amount of trauma that my ankles have incurred over my lifetime, I've had my fair share of massage therapists and also physical therapists working with me. So I'm going to give just a quick little overview of what that means and how that relates into a person raising their consciousness, you know, scaling that, and also how it affects your ability to be very successful in business. So in my case, I've had 6 major injuries to my right ankle. 5 out of 6 of them were basketball related. I'm talking, you know, double fractures, tearing the tendons and ligaments. And the one that was not basketball related was involved in a hiking incident. My left ankle, I've only had 1 incident, and that was enough, because that one was so bad that I had full reconstructive surgery done on my left ankle. And that also was basketball related. So with, you know, as a person that's been on the conscious spiritual path for many years, one of the things that I came to understand fairly quickly was that I could sit there and tell somebody, okay, I had a basketball injury. I had a double fracture while I was hiking, and somebody's like, oh, well, that's really bad or whatever. I knew that if that's just the surface, there was an underlying issue that went much, much deeper. And you're not going to get those answers going to a physical therapist. And you're certainly not going to get those answers by wearing a cast for 6 months or whatever long it takes for you, to heal. Your ankle, your tendons, your ligaments will heal much faster than the underlying issue that might be causing that. And it could be ancestral. It could also go back many, many lifetimes. It could be a part of the collective consciousness. The issue, though, is in my case, it had to do with feeling stable. It had to do with owning my own authentic voice and sharing my message. Now, for people who understand those chakras, you're going, okay, well, I don't know of any chakras that are in your ankle, right? So the throat chakra. So behind me is an image of the throat chakra. And that's really an essence of what I do, right? Helping people unleash their inspired voice. But the issues that were happening with my ankles went much deeper. And I've had some very talented people try to tap into that and give me some insights. And some of them were on point and some of them weren't. Here's the thing with Janine. And you said something earlier too about just when you tap into working with people, there is a level of trust here. Mm-hmm. For me, coming into your office, I had to be willing to say yes to allowing you to tap into my energetic field. This isn't just about saying, okay, yes, you can massage my ankle. Yeah. This was about allowing you to use your gift at the fullest capabilities that they are. And you are the real deal. Because I will say to my audience listening to this, you tapped into things and were taking notes throughout this entire process, and then had an incredible debriefing session with me. You picked up on things that nobody's ever picked up on before. Mm-hmm. And that told me right there, first and foremost, it was extremely healing for me, because I was able to get some confirmation on things at a critical point for me to move forward with all the work that I'm doing. And then that also allowed me to finally lay to rest some of the issues that have been burdening me for most of my life. And that introduction to your session actually came from a workshop you were doing where you talked about shadow work. And I was really impressed by how you dealt with that. So I know I've talked a little bit about, I've kind of gone on for a bit on that, but I really want people to understand this is a multi-dimensionally, it goes on multiple levels here. Mm-hmm. And it has a direct impact on one's confidence and ability to heal the stuff that you might not be aware of. So with that said, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you noticed, just patterns with some of your own clients and things that they were not aware of, that in working with you, once they became conscious of some of the trauma that going to the root of an issue, like what are some of the things that you see with your clients, and then how is that impacting them in their personal and professional lives?
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. And I definitely want to, honor you for the truth of the matter, which you touched on, is each person has to be really willing and ready to enable these things to come up, or else they just wouldn't come up. So, the power is always within us. It's really, amazing when you can find someone to help you facilitate that. But, we each really are the ones doing the work. So kudos for you on that. Some of the patterns that are really common that I see, and especially lately, I notice things kind of come in patterns, in fact, as far as what the root issues are. There's generally a sense of it's repeating patterns in some way, whether that's on an ancestral, we have a genetic memory, whether that's from that level or if it's a karmic level. I notice a really repeating pattern of people not feeling comfortable to speak their truth, to really be connected with who they really are, because they don't feel safe to do so. And that can be, from past lifetimes where they were persecuted and, killed for doing such things. Or it can just be even in this lifetime as a child. If you've ever been taught, stop talking, you're being too loud, or be quiet, nobody wants to hear that, things like that, those patterns get imprinted within us. And so the voice, the authentic voice is such a huge one. Boundaries and how to go about setting healthy boundaries is also a really common theme that I see coming up. And grief from, again, every case is so individual, but it usually tends to be a little bit of residual grief from not being in touch with their authentic self and not feeling safe to express that. But also there's carryover and repeating patterns from other lifetimes that we are carrying over, and they're kind of repeating their ugly heads here. And we're here to, finally lay those to rest. So those are some of the more common ones I see.
You could have been just naming off some of the things that I actually came into this session with too. So I can attest to that. That is absolutely true. And I think people listening to this and watching this video certainly can relate to some of the challenges of speaking their truth. And I mean, obviously with, a program that's about helping people scale their consciousness while scaling their business, this is called Unleash Your Inspired Voice. This isn't necessarily about unleash your inspired voice and just be successful overnight. That's not at all what this is about. This is about recognizing, consciously bringing the things that are hiding in the shadows, hence the term shadow work, the programs and conditioning hiding in the shadows that get in the way of our authentic voice and being able to share our message in whatever ways we're called to do that. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the ways that you work with your clients, like, and specifically like some of the things that you do that help people unlock that essence of them, and where they're feeling confident and they're able to move past some of the traumas that they've experienced in their life up to this point?
Oftentimes it begins on people come in because there's a physical issue that is bothering them, which is super common because, we don't usually pay attention to something until it's in our face in a physical manifestation. And it's like, okay, now it's time to pay attention to it. So it usually starts there. And whether it's excess weight that people are carrying, they can't seem to shed no matter what they're doing, which is very common because that's usually a manifestation of emotional weight that we're still carrying. So I usually begin with an energy session after doing an initial consultation with them to see what it is that they're exactly looking for. And then we begin to tailor a plan that really works for them. It will also include, after the energy session and tapping in to get in touch with whatever their higher self is bringing up, that will really give me a clearer picture of which tools will help work best for this person. So for example, journaling every single day, even if it's a sentence, I can't even begin to tell you how powerful that is. It's such a simple thing and we resist it so much, myself included. But if it's, if somebody's really having a hard time with journaling and making themselves sit down and write, that's fine. You can just voice journal. You always have time to talk about what you're feeling in your car on the way to work, just a couple sentences. That just helps kind of exercise that muscle of getting back in touch with your authentic self. There's also a lot of left brain tools that I use, such as Change Your Beliefs worksheet, which is a great one from Byron Katie, actually, and she has that on her website too, so you can feel free to look that up and download that for free. That is a really helpful process for when you are just so stuck in a specific perspective on something, and it is inhibiting you, because they do, but it really helps to flip it so you can see it from a different perspective and then let go of that belief. Because a belief is really just a repeating thought that we just keep saying to ourselves over and over and over. So you have to be willing to change your perspective for that to work. But it often offers you an insight and shows you back that really at the root of everything, even though we want to point our finger at other people, they did this or they said that, the power is actually always within us, because we get to choose how we respond to that. We get to choose if we are going to give our power away to that situation or not. We get to choose whether we're going to take what somebody says to us and make it our truth and let it inhibit us, for the rest of our life, which is something I've personally dealt with also. And that came up in my very first Reiki session ever. So a lot of those tools are just so powerful for that, in addition to the energy work and whatever else they may be doing as far as exercise or dietary support.
That's excellent. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast now and are watching this on a video, obviously you're going to continue to move through this interview with us, but I encourage you to go back to that section where Janine was just talking about some of these things and listen to that again. Don't just dismiss it and go, okay, those are some really good ideas, and then go back to your, normal habits, right? So as she was saying, changing your perspective isn't just about making the decision, well, I got to make a change. Yes, it might start there, but the repetitive effort and the self-discipline, that is a byproduct of self-love. It's the ability to stay with something because the pain of not doing it is going to be worse than the pain of actually having to face the things that you don't want to, but is calling your attention to. And with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about one area of shadow work that is so often overlooked, and that is the importance of listening to the body. Because you said earlier that a lot of the people that come into your office and work with you, they're initially going in there because they've reached a point where they can't get past the pain anymore, right? And so the body is just screaming out, get your ass into Janine's office. But they don't realize all of the layers and what's manifesting and what's causing that. So talk a little bit about the importance of listening to our body and how that plays a role in healing the trauma.
So important. The physical body is basically the conduit for trying to communicate with us about what's going on all of the other levels, whether it is beginning on a mental level with a belief you have, or if it's on an emotional level because of something that happened to you that, you stuffed that and you're not even aware that you're still holding on to it. And even going back to karmic and ancestral stuff. The physical body, by the time something manifests physically for you, is really just trying to communicate with you. So yes, absolutely, there are things we know that we can do to help our physical health be better, whether that's get out and move around more, stop eating so much processed sugar, switch to eating organic, raise your vibration naturally through your foods that you're eating, drink more water. We, from an Ayurvedic perspective, we would treat with the opposite depending on whatever's going on and depending on what that particular person's type or dosha is. But a lot of, especially here in the US, I'm noticing with our crisis of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and all of this stuff is really just the end result of us being disconnected from our feelings, from our true self, and all of us being in touch with who we really are. So these are coping mechanisms we're seeing a lot of. Food, especially, that to me is our biggest drug issue in the entire country. And because it's socially acceptable, it's readily available. Nobody gives you a dirty look for eating a donut like they would if you were sitting on a street corner, with a needle in your arm. But really, it's the same thing. You're using, there's a coping mechanism, there's an addiction there, which is trying to get your attention to go back to something. It's our job to just peel back the layers and try to figure out what that is. It's not always a pleasant process, but you can move past it so much faster if you're willing to just accept what is there. And that's really just the key of what it is. You know, the shadow side of us is all of the sides and things about ourselves that we've deemed unacceptable. Well, as soon as we welcome them in, as soon as we just shine the light on them and just let them be what they are, everything falls into balance automatically as a side effect. You know, sometimes in some sessions, just bringing up a specific incident that might have happened in someone's childhood helps shift the entire energy around it. And they don't necessarily need to do any more work with it. Some issues go a little bit deeper, and we have tools that we use for that. But, you know, it's so worth it. I really cannot stress that enough, at how naturally the world outside of us will shift when we're shifting the stuff inside of us. It's the most beautiful thing you could ever do for yourself.
I can completely agree with you 100%. It is really the fullest expression of self-love. And that's the thing. A lot of times you hear this term self-love. A lot of people will think, well, is that narcissistic? Not even close. No. Self-love is also not about rainbows and unicorns and, you know, love and light, although it can be. Mm-hmm. But to get to the love and rainbows and light and unicorns and all of the happy stuff, we have to undo the shit that was piled onto us when we were younger, when we didn't understand what was going on, where all of a sudden this negative interject, this voice that now directs us away from what it thinks is pain, is actually, it came in at a particular point in time when we needed it, right? So that negative interject was our protector during a time when it would appear that nobody was protecting us. The issue is that as we get older, and we start to learn more about who we are, and we start to listen to just a little bit, you know, our heart's desires, and we go, okay, this is maybe what I want to go do. Maybe this is the kind of person, you know, I want to be with, and I want to have this kind of business or have this kind of career. Whatever it is that your heart's calling you to, that negative interject goes, holy shit, no, don't go down that road because you're going to get hurt. I got to protect you. Mm-hmm. And we listen to it, or we try to ignore it. But the problem is, even when we ignore it or we even listen to it a little, however you pay attention to it, if we're not really understanding the core root, it's like a ninja. It just jumps out of nowhere, and it's going to get you, like, just before you're crossing the finish line, it's like, oh, what just happened? And most of the time we think it's someone outside of us that's doing it to us, like, oh, life is doing this to me. No, it's not. So with all the things you've been talking about, I think it's truly incredible that, and I hope people are going to go back and re-listen to this. One of the things I want to do is ask you about your journey, because having had an opportunity to be in a workshop with you, having just the profound experience I did during a session, and then of course doing the bonus video that we've already done on shadow work, I can attest you are the real deal. You're walking your talk. You are an authentic, conscious-minded, heart-centered entrepreneur. But I also know you didn't just get here overnight. So there's a journey that you've been on. And if you can, share a little bit about your journey and what were some of the things that prompted you to understand how to get to the root of an issue and what that's done for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You know, we don't, as we say, we're not practitioners of these things because we have it all figured out and we've never had to deal with any issues. Absolutely not. We're definitely here to teach what we've gone through. And for me, at the time, I didn't really realize it was the beginning of my journey, but it began from a physical standpoint, as it does for most people. And began it being only 21 years old and having no energy, chronic fatigue, and then headaches every single day. 60 pounds overweight, just as a result of eating what I thought everybody else ate, didn't have any clue about healthy eating and what organic even was. But it was the headaches, the constant headaches, that finally sent me into a doctor. And the doctor basically ended up telling me that it was probably just stress, and he wrote me a prescription for ibuprofen. And it made no sense to me. I was like, I'm only 21. I'm not that stressed out. It has to be something else, So I left his office, went back to my work, and was complaining about the whole experience. Luckily, actually, because somebody that was working there overheard, and she suggested that I go see a nutritionist that her sister had just gone to see and had amazing results with. And at the time, literally, it was such a foreign concept to me that your health would actually be connected to your diet. So I was like, okay, yeah, exactly. I mean, I was completely oblivious. So I went to see her because, the other thing didn't work. So I'm going to try something else. And it absolutely changed my life. I found out I had a severe sensitivity to gluten, even though I didn't know what gluten was. I had a vitamin B12 deficiency, which was contributing to my chronic fatigue. As a result of, I wasn't absorbing it because of my gluten sensitivity. So eating away at the layers of your lining of your stomach and intestines prevents you from being able to absorb nutrition that you are eating. On top of that, I had adrenal fatigue, and I also had the highest blood sugar levels she said she'd ever seen in anyone my age. And that really freaked me out because I have, family members who have diabetes, and I just wanted nothing to do with needles and medication and any of that. So that really scared me straight. And I was like, teach me everything you know about nutrition. I'll do it. I'm diving right in. And as a side effect, really, of just eating healthy, I ended up losing about 60 pounds over the course of 4 months, and felt amazing. I really couldn't believe how amazing I felt. And it was one of those light bulb situations where you realize, oh my God, this is how we're supposed to feel, as human beings. It's not normal to be tired at 3 o'clock and need coffee to keep you awake and all of these things. So that really kind of set me on my path. And even though I was feeling physically healthy and everything was great in that arena, I started noticing these other unhealthy patterns, popping up and rearing their ugly head in all of these other areas. So I luckily was smart enough to be able to connect the dots and see, oh, so these are very connected. I knew there was some connection. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but I knew that there was a connection. So that set me off on my journey of seeking more information. I found Ayurveda as a result of that, and their approach, the health and balance of mind, body, spirit, because they're all connected, just made sense. It just made complete sense. And then from there, I just began practicing as an Ayurvedic practitioner. And the foot treatment specifically that you mentioned, it's actually not meant to be an intuitive treatment. It just sort of turned on that way for me. It was one of those things, if you've ever done something and you feel like, I feel like I've done this before, this was what that was like for me. So I just kind of went with it. I didn't really understand in the beginning what was going on, but I started seeing, past life, these imprints of people's other lifetimes that were carrying over into patterns of this lifetime, and things like that. Sometimes people's deceased loved ones would come through with messages. But it was just a mind-blowing process. It is one of my favorite treatments, and just such a powerful way to help detox your physical body and also detox on an emotional and energetic level, just clearing away whatever is there. So that's kind of how I got my start.
That's incredible. And I think one of the things that I took away from just listening to that I want to impart upon for the audience is recognition of patterns. Mm-hmm. And as a business owner, one of the ways that you can scale your business very quickly and efficiently is recognizing patterns of your audience. So you can adjust your message to more align with the heart and soul of your target audience. Well, that applies directly back to your personal life and recognizing patterns that are getting in the way of your happiness. Because I can speak from personal experience. I've also had a lot of clients that have been enormously successful and they're absolutely miserable, and that was the case for me. I was literally 140 plus pounds overweight, almost 160 pounds overweight. And I was absolutely a miserable wreck. And yet that was at a point where I was extremely successful from a business standpoint. And so when people hear about these things, I want to make it very clear that when your body starts to deteriorate because you're not listening to your body and you're not doing the inner shadow work, here's what happens. If your body dies, how are you going to be successful in your business? You're not fucking here anymore. You're gone, right? You're into another dimension, another plane of existence. But it's not this 3D existence where you can go have fun and do the things you want to do and be around the people you love. So as important as it is for all of us, conscious-minded, heart-centered entrepreneurs to get our inspired message out there, that actually is secondary to understanding what's going on the inside. What is keeping us from unleashing our inspired voice? What is keeping us from having healthy relationships? What is keeping us from being physically in good shape? And I mean, not just going to the gym. So these are things that are really critical. I want to wrap things up because I want to talk real quickly, though, about the root issue that you yourself, what you've learned about just how do I put this? But when you look at your own journey and you look at the work you're doing with your clients, give an example of like a root issue that was completely unconscious, maybe to you or to one of your clients, where you've seen a massive breakthrough, and how that just opens up opportunities that would have not been there if that person or even yourself hadn't gotten clear and consciously aware of the issue that was getting in the way of their happiness and success.
Absolutely. The very first actually really light bulb moment for me, as far as, oh my God, like everything is literally, all of the gifts and all of the treasure is in our subconscious stuff, was through my very first Reiki session. It came around at a time in my life where seemingly everything around me was falling apart. You know, this was probably 2009, so post-recession, you know, going through a foreclosure, going through a bankruptcy, having to, my car got totaled. Somebody ran a red light and totaled my car, and it was just like one thing after the other, and it was like, what is going on? And I finally was just so frustrated that I just literally to the universe was like, all right, I need help. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. And so not randomly, a friend of mine had mentioned that he had a friend that was, he said, she's into something called Reiki, and I don't know, it sounds like it might be up your alley. I don't really know what it is, but maybe you should call her. So I did. She came over and did a session at my home for me. And during the session, it was just, you know, a traditional Reiki session. Nothing super noticeable happened, except for I just felt very relaxed. I could feel the energy coming from her, and I felt really calm and great. And I thought, okay, that's great, cool, whatever, and went to bed. And it really wasn't until I started to dream that really brought up what was underneath the surface. So in the dream, I was around 11 or 12, and I was in a school gym, and there was a volleyball game going on. And I was walking around at the time with a couple of friends in the dream, and we decided to leave. Well, when we went to the exit, this big stone statue fell right in front of the door, so we couldn't get out. It was blocking our way. So the rest of the dream was spent going to these various exits, but having the same thing happen. There was a big block there. It jolted me awake and brought up such a feeling of anxiety with it that I instantly recalled a memory from when I was 11 or 12, and I had tried out for the volleyball team and found out I got accepted and was all excited. And I was in the car with my mom talking about it. And she looked at me and she said, you know, the only reason you got accepted on the team was because you showed up every day. Well, at the time, as a child, I took that like it was like a dagger, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, so you're saying I suck at this, basically, and maybe I shouldn't be doing it. And so I felt exactly all of the emotions I felt. I was right back there. It was so, so incredibly profound. And I shifted very quickly from that space right into anger at her for, you said this to me. I can't believe she did that. Look at what she did to me. And then I even shifted from that perspective, though, because it was like, well, what am I going to, as my adult self was coming in, like, what are you going to do? Bring this up, you know, like 30 years later, and she's just going to beat herself up over it. And I know now from an adult perspective, what she was actually trying to teach me was the power and the importance of showing up on time. You show up when you say you're going to show up. All of these things that she holds very, you know, they're very powerful and valuable to her. So I had the click moment. The shift became, oh my God, it actually has nothing to do with her. It was my responsibility to either say something to her to have her clarify what she was saying, but I also had agreed on a subconscious level. I took what she said to me as my truth, and I literally let it hold me back from everything else in my life from that point forward. I mean, I could see how it had spread like branches of a tree into all these other areas of my life. I never went out for anything I wasn't already good at ever after that. So it was a huge, huge, powerful healing moment for me. And as soon as that happened, it was like, oh, wow. I just could see all the ways I was holding myself back and how I had given my power away. So it became important for me from that point forward. I knew, hey, if you feel a call, you need to follow it no matter what anybody else says. You know, it can be subtle, but you got to follow that thing because that's your soul speaking to you. And that is something that is true for every single one of us.
Wow, that's an incredible experience. And thank you first and foremost just for sharing that. And I want to just underscore the importance of some of the things you said so that people listening to this really can look at that and say, okay, I have found myself thinking, thoughts about, well, am I worthy enough to achieve this? Am I worthy enough to achieve that? And maybe you don't speak to yourself on that level. Maybe people talk, listening to this don't talk to themselves like that. But I can assure you that at some point in your life, some external experience, something that somebody said, as subtle as what Janine was just giving an example of with her mother, that subtle statement could be misinterpreted when you're younger, and it begins to root itself in a deep-seated unconscious program that ends up, unbeknownst to you, running the show.
Yeah.
So here you might be very successful going through life. You've got a family, you got a business, you've got a great career, and you think you're in control of everything, when in reality, maybe you're not.
Yeah.
So how do you get back in control? And I think one of the key things that you said, Janine, you said actually two very important things about the idea of listening. One, you talk about listening to the body. You just mentioned listening to your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing to, for everybody listening to this podcast, this segment, to take this away. Your soul, your body is always talking to you. The question is, are you listening?
Mm-hmm.
Because your mind is constantly chattering and you're being bombarded by all sorts of messaging from the external. And a lot of the chattering that's going on isn't necessarily just from the external. The external is actually reinforcing some deep-seated unconscious programs. And I feel that what you do, Janine, that is so important to the world and people healing themselves and in turn being able to heal the planet is you help them get to the root. You get to the root of the issue. You get right to it. And from that point, you can begin constructing a series of steps for your clients to move to a point where they're healing themselves emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. I mean, when you start looking at it from those angles, that takes us back to multidimensional wellness. So is there anything that you could, as we wrap everything up here, is there anything else that you'd like to say to the audience? Just, something that you feel would be important for people to get more clarity on in terms of being able to heal themselves. Maybe they, obviously they can come work with you at your office. And if you're not in the El Dorado Hills, California region, you don't have to be in the region to be able to work with Janine. There's ways that you can work with her. So if you can just kind of talk a little bit about what is something that a person can go do, like after listening to this podcast, that might be able to help them get to the root issue before they start to work with someone like yourself.
Absolutely. Everybody, and it's so simple, yet so powerful. You just think about what the recurring patterns in your life are. What are these themes that keep coming up for you? Whether it's a relationship pattern, you seem to keep dating the same kind of people, even though they're different people, or you're running into the same kind of boss at work, or you keep having the same health issue. What is a repeating theme? Do you have a unhealthy relationship in your financial health arena? Whatever the case may be, all you have to start doing is asking, okay, how can I see this from a different perspective? What is the message here? Because that's really what it's trying to do, is really, it's not attacking you. It's not trying to keep you down. It's trying to show you and point you in the right direction of where the healing needs to happen so that you can have the life that you want to create and enjoy, as a happy side effect of simply just asking the question and being willing to hear the answers. That's just the most powerful thing you could do for yourself.
Oh, beautifully said. So how would somebody get in contact with you? Where can they go to learn more about you and Urban Alchemy?
Sure. You can go to www.urban-alchemy.org, and there's all kinds of information on there for you to explore.
Awesome.
If it resonates.
Well, I'm assuming the people listening to this podcast, this definitely resonates. And I'll be just very blunt. If the material and topics that Janine and I have been talking about does not resonate, seriously, I don't know what else to say to you, because, you know, if you're here to raise the consciousness of your own self, if you're here to have an inspired message that positively impacts the planet, again, and I can't stress this enough, there is nothing more important than doing shadow work, going in deep into the unconscious mind, going into your Pandora's box. And as Janine was talking about, listen to your soul, listen to your body, follow the patterns, because they're not going to lead you astray. Your mind, the chatter, the unconscious programming that you might not even be aware of, that likely is going to lead you down a road that you don't want to go down. So again, listen, change your perspective, and above all else, love yourself enough to do the inner work, because the payoff is unimaginable. So with that said, Janine, I want to thank you again for being a part of the podcast. And for everyone listening, I promised you I'd give you some information about getting access to that bonus video on shadow work. You can go to peterclarknelson.com. You'll see a form there on the homepage and also on the podcast page that talks about bonus material that our guests are providing. And this is a very unique thing that I don't think a lot of podcasts, if any other than ours, is doing. We are allowing you to have an extended conversation with our guests. A lot of our guests are providing additional downloadable material. Janine was also very gracious to provide a downloadable PDF called Why Heal. Definitely you want to immerse yourself into the energy and intent she's woven into the words there. And of course, we've got a 30-minute bonus video on shadow work. You will also find other bonus material from other guests. This is an opportunity for you to go deeper into the topics that you've learned and heard about on the Unleash Your Inspired Voice podcast. Again, I want to thank you, Janine, for being a part of this. And I encourage everybody to go to urban-alchemy.org, learn more about Janine and her services. And I look forward to having you all join me on the next episode of Unleash Your Inspired Voice.
Thank you.